afternoon. It's Sunday, February 8th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. All eyes are on the Munich Security Conference, where a range of international trouble spots are being deliberated: the nuclearization of Iran, the Middle East peace process, the war against Islamic State, and the Ukrainian crisis top the list of topics under consideration. IBA's Margot Dudkevich has been keeping track.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with his Iranian counterpart for a second time today to discuss efforts to reach an agreement ahead of March 31st, the deadline set by world powers to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. While little of the 90-minute meeting between the two was revealed, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif was later quoted saying, "Imposing yet another extension to the deadline is in no one's interest," adding failure to reach a deal would not be the end of the world.
I do not believe another extension is in the interest of anybody, as I did not believe this extension was either necessary or useful. We are prepared to reassure the international community. It seems that quite a bit of reassurance is needed for some of our negotiating partners at least. But at the same time, it is important that restrictions that have been imposed on the Iranian people be lifted.
Zarif also took a jab at Israel.
To make sure they cannot create a smokescreen to hide their atrocities against the Palestinian people, their continued violations of Palestinian human rights, their continued acts of aggression against Palestinian and Lebanese and Jordanian and Syrian people, under the guise of a hypothetical Iranian threat which is more hype than anything else.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini invited the Middle East Quartet to convene a meeting in an effort to revive the peace process. After 25 years, it's time for a security strategy. We need collective rethinking of our overall approach to the conflict, she insisted.
We know that we need to build a new international consensus to get this conflict to a solution. US, EU, Russia, UN are the important pillars of these efforts. We all bring different and complementary strengths to the table. I have invited the Quartet principals to meet today, just in a few hours, to discuss the situation in the region and to underline the importance of the parties resuming negotiations as soon as possible.
Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi chose to discuss the war on terror, specifically against the Islamic State, noting the support given by the US-led international coalition bombing ISIS targets. The Iraqi army, he says, needs more training and weaponry.
We in Iraq are facing a formidable new terror generation, which is not only threatening Iraq, it is threatening the region. It is threatening the whole world at the moment. As far as I know, we are the only country that have armies on the ground fighting Daesh, and we should get all the support possible to do that.
Serious tension between the US and Russia over fighting in eastern Ukraine appears to continue. This despite diplomatic efforts by the US, France and Germany to end the violence. Germany's Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said Russia had not shown enough readiness to compromise on Ukraine. US Vice President Joe Biden warned the US, Europe and the international community will continue to impose costs on Moscow until it stops providing troops and arms to separatists. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov insisted over the weekend that Russia's annexation of Crimea followed a legitimate vote. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, however, denied suggestions there was a split between Europe and the U.S. over the Ukrainian crisis.
Today, Russia is seeking to fundamentally alter the security landscape of Eastern and Central Europe, first through its illegal occupation of Crimea, and now through the brazen effort, the overt effort, the indisputable effort to destabilize Eastern Ukraine.
The annual Munich Security Conference has become a key gathering of the international strategic community. While many issues were raised and discussed, it remains to be seen if they will change the situation on the ground. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the deadline for the nuclear deal being worked out with Iran is closer than ever and demands speaking out against it. At the same time, he is under increased pressure from American Jewish leaders to cancel his scheduled speech to Congress. Here with more is Eli Wagelander.
Good evening. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared this morning at the weekly cabinet meeting that he would continue to try to defeat an expected agreement between the U.S. and Iran over the latter's nuclear development program. According to Netanyahu, the international powers in Iran are racing forward with an agreement that will allow Iran to arm with nuclear weapons, something that will threaten the existence of the State of Israel. He cited the end of March target date for an agreement as leading to the urgency in his efforts, saying, "We will continue to act and to lead the international efforts against the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons, and we will act in every way to foil the bad and dangerous agreement that would cast a heavy cloud over the future of Israel." Toward that end, Netanyahu is set to speak before Congress about the Iranian nuclear threat in early March, 2 weeks before the Israeli election, a speech that has infuriated the Obama administration, and with Netanyahu coming under increasing pressure both at home and in the U.S. to scrap the appearance. One of his critics at home has been opposition leader and Labor chairman Isaac Herzog, who reportedly had a brief discussion with U.S. Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of State John Kerry at the Munich conference. Herzog downplayed the meetings in an interview with Army Radio today, saying the meeting with Biden was completely informal and not related to Netanyahu or the upcoming elections. Herzog did say at the conference that the antagonism Netanyahu's speech to Congress is causing in Washington only serves to further damage Israel's relationship with the U.S.
I am committed to trying again to reignite the political process between Israel and the Palestinians, in coordination with a strong regional platform. The recent unilateral steps of the Palestinian Authority are counterproductive. We will never allow our nation and our soldiers to be drawn into a legal and political farce at the International Court, Criminal Court. This is not the way forward.
Pressure on Netanyahu to cancel his address is also growing from mainstream and liberal American Jewish organizational leaders. Abe Foxman of the ADL says the controversy surrounding the trip has overshadowed the initial goal of Netanyahu's speech. He noted that while Netanyahu's warnings about Iran were serious, the political furor over the speech has turned the whole thing into a circus. It has been hijacked by politics, Foxman said. Now's the time to recalibrate, restart, and find a new platform and new timing to take away the distractions. Malcolm Hoenlein, Executive Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, downplayed concerns that Netanyahu's talk would cause further tension in the U.S.-Israel ties, saying Israel cannot be a partisan issue. I do not think the Prime Minister's speech will do what people think. He is not coming to attack the president or take sides. As for who is coming to Netanyahu's speech, Biden declared over the weekend that he'll be flying abroad on that day, so he's out. A Channel 10 report on Friday indicated that some 40 Democratic legislators were currently expected to stay away from the address. By yesterday, that number had grown to 60 legislators. Republican and conservative Jewish organizations are threatening shaming campaigns against Democrats who skip the address. Said Matt Brooks, executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, "This is, I think, a critical visit by the Prime Minister. If these Democrats would rather put partisan politics ahead of principle and walk out on the Prime Minister of Israel, then we have an obligation to make that known." This story is not going away. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called to establish a special committee to compile cases of alleged war crimes against Israel to be submitted to the International Criminal Court. A presidential decree issued by Abbas yesterday revealed the committee will be headed by PA negotiator Saeb Erekat and entrusted with preparing files and documents to be presented to the court. Committee members will meet with lawyers and other legal consultants to prepare the cases against Israel. Last month, ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda announced the start of a preliminary examination of the situation in Palestinian areas. A statement released by her office said she would probe with full independence and impartiality alleged Israeli war crimes committed during last summer's war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Another tragedy for Israeli tourists, as one woman was killed and 5 others injured in a road accident in North Canterbury, New Zealand. 61-year-old Leora Karen was the only fatality among 6 Israeli tourists traveling together in a rented van that rolled more than 40 meters down a bank near the Huruni River. One of the tourists is in critical condition, and the others have light to moderate injuries and are being treated at Christchurch Hospital. All of the victims are in their 60s and 70s. According to police, the van was heading toward Christchurch on State Highway No. 1 when it inexplicably crossed the highway and then a field before plunging over the cliff onto a creek bed on the property of a local farmer. Rescue officers said that the cliff was a very steep drop and they were surprised there were not more fatalities. The reason for the accident is being investigated. A Jewish terrorist has been released after 13 years in prison. Ofer Gamliel was a member of the extremist right-wing underground group from Bat Ain. He was convicted in 2003 of attempting to blow up a Muslim girls' school in East Jerusalem, along with his accomplice Shlomi Dvir. 3 years ago, Gamliel filed for the reduction of his 15-year sentence by 1/3 after expressing regret for his actions and having a record of good behavior behind bars. The parole board of the Israel Prison Service decided to grant Gamliel's parole, but the prosecutor's office appealed against the early release. The Supreme Court then ordered the Gamliel to undergo further rehabilitation to ensure that he is not a danger to the public. Gamliel's release was made final when the prosecution announced that it had removed its opposition to his parole. There will soon be very few Christians left in the Middle East due to the turmoil racking the region. That's the view of Britain's Prince Charles, who is in Jordan at the start of a Middle East tour. The heir to the British throne told the BBC that the plight of Christians persecuted by Islamic extremists was the most agonizing situation. Appealing for the building of bridges between religions, Charles admitted that the problem will not go away anytime soon. He also said that the number of vulnerable young Muslims being radicalized through the internet was frightening, and their rise in numbers and violence is intimidating Christians, especially in Iraq and Syria. Christians have been in the Middle East for 2,000 years, said Charles, so their disappearance makes it even greater tragedy. In addition to Jordan, Charles is visiting Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Europeans are looking to Israel for help in providing defense against terror attacks. Surveillance and general security needs are at a premium due to the recent surge in violence in their region. Reporter Alexandra Jen has that story.
Israel appears to have the answers to Europe's security questions. Terrorist attacks are currently plaguing European countries. And as a result, Israeli homeland security companies are enjoying a 30% increase in business. Private Israeli security companies are providing their services and experience to those in need of protection against terror attacks. With the looming threat of ISIS and the influx of lone wolf terrorists attacking at random, Europeans are demanding protection.
The world is less innocent. People start to understand the threats and the dangers, and start to demand security.
An Israeli firm called Tactical Zone simulates potential attacks as a strategy to better prepare their contractors. Watch the simulation as a woman is protected from an attacker. The contractor quickly rushes her into the car and stays on guard while they drive away. Israelis not only flaunt military-trained personnel prepared for quick response and threat detection, but also top-of-the-line security technology. Camerotech is one of those devices. It is a camera that can detect stationary and moving objects behind walls or barriers. Kareel International has another product already used by the IDF. The eyeball is a camera with 360-degree rotation capacity, reducing the danger associated with gathering information in small spaces like caves, tunnels, or alleys. The ultimate goal for enhanced security and preparedness in Europe is to detect terrorist attacks early and prevent as many of them as possible. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
And on to that startup nation we've heard so much about. Crowdfunding of high-tech is the name of the game at Our Crowd here in Jerusalem. Alexandra Jen spoke with CEO John Medved about the current investment atmosphere and the role being played by the equity-based crowdfunding company. Alex, what did he have to say?
Well, Laura, John Medved talked about all things investment, beginning with why Israel is considered startup nation.
Investment is a very Jewish thing, okay? It's no accident that Jews have been really good at business, okay? And we don't like to talk about it because, God forbid, people should know that, but everybody knows that, okay? Go look at the Forbes 400, look at the similar lists in other countries of the world, look at the number of Nobel Prizes. We're good at this, and the reason we're good at this is because we know how to step out of our comfort zone. To be Jewish is to be a risk taker. To be Jewish to a certain degree is to be delusional. Okay, we've been delusional since Father Abraham when we saw God not in an idol. Okay, we've been immigrants, and the immigrant culture is all about taking risks. And so we live in risk central, right? And very few countries in the world are under the kind of existential threat that we're under here in Israel. But on the other hand, we don't let it get us down. Okay, it's like that old Jewish joke, you know, they tried to kill us, they didn't succeed, now let's eat.
Tell me about the current mood surrounding investment here in Israel.
There's never been a better time to invest in Israel. It turns out that 2014, we broke all previous records. There was $3.4 billion invested in almost 700 Israeli startups. This is unprecedented. It's up about 40% from the year before. This was in a year of the war, I would remind you. Okay. On the other hand, more important for investors is not how much money is invested, but how much money is taken out at the back end. It's called an exit, either through an IPO or through a merger and acquisition. Last year, $15 billion of exits, more exits than ever before, including the largest IPO of all time from Israel, a company called Mobileye here in Jerusalem. There were about 20 other IPOs, including one of our companies here at our crowd called Rewalk, which many of them were actually 3 out of the 10 best performing IPOs in New York this year were Israeli companies. So you've got this scene where literally money is flowing into the country, and the big companies are coming here and buying the best of the Israeli companies.
Has investment been affected by the upcoming elections?
Right now, the Israeli economy is firing on all cylinders because there's been a pro-growth attitude here in the country. It's not been a debate about how do we divide the pie, and the pie always stays the same, but how do we grow the pie? And if that approach is maintained in this coming election, if we continue to have an economy and a tax system that encourages entrepreneurship, that says that it's not a fixed pie that simply needs to be divided, but it's a pie that we all together need to grow so that everyone benefits, that we have social mobility, so that everybody can get into this, then I think it won't have an effect. Unfortunately, there are some people, I think, running in this election who don't understand how much of a miracle it's been here in Israel in terms of the economic progress. I've been here for 34 years. Israel today is nothing like it used to be. It used to be a really state-oriented socialist economy, and today we're a free market economy, and I hope very much that we stay that way.
With regards to outside investment, what countries are interested in investing in Israel?
First of all, everybody. Okay, our biggest partner in terms of investment is clearly the United States. People from Silicon Valley or from Wall Street are all over this country. Turns out that Europe is our largest trading partner. Despite all of the political issues we have with Europe, we continue to do just incredible business, but increasingly it's Asia. And the country is being flooded with investors from not just China, where the biggest companies are coming here and setting up research and development centers and buying Israeli companies, but also countries such as Japan and Korea and elsewhere. There's an increasing Asian flavor, which of course is very good because that's where the growing markets are. There's a lot of money there. And we at our crowd are now starting to see our first Asian investors get onto the site, and they're coming. And once they come, they'll come in mass. And I think that, you know, the future in terms of Israel's trade and Israel's business and investment scene is going to be increasingly with Asia.
Here's a suggestion to whoever forms the next government: John Medved for Minister of Foreign Investment. Laura.
Thanks for that report, Alexander. Former Israeli national soccer team coach Avram Grant is making his impact overseas. The coach of Team Ghana reached the finals of the African Cup of Nations after a 3-0 win over the host Equatorial Guinea. It was an ugly sight at the semifinals when Ghana players and fans were pelted with water bottles, glass, stones, and other debris by home fans, bringing the game to a halt for over half an hour and leading to a $100,000 fine for Equatorial Guinea. Grant is just one game away from taking Ghana to their first Cup of Nations in 33 years. Grant and Ghana will go for gold at tonight's final when they face the Ivory Coast. Grant told the press how impressed he is with his team and referred to the disturbance at the end of the game.
I said they did it very, very well. They show a lot of mental strength in a very difficult situation. And I think also they show to the people in the country that there is a group of players that they can count on them and enjoy from them.
In entertainment news, the National Dance Company of Ireland is on a tour of the country with their Rhythm of the Dance show. The 2-hour dance and music extravaganza marries the contemporary and ancient Irish dance traditions. The production features a live band, 3 tenors, and 22 dancers. Rhythm of the Dance is internationally rated as one of the most popular and busiest Irish step dance shows in the world and has been performed by some 4.5 million fans worldwide. The troupe will make stops in Haifa, Carmiel, Kfar Saba, Beersheva, Ashdod, and Kiryat Motzkin over the next week. British crooner James Blunt impressed the Tel Aviv crowd last night at Menorah Miftachim Arena. In his first ever concert in Israel, the 40-year-old singer delighted the audience with a combination of his best hits and some of his newer or lesser-known works. It was mutual admiration, as Blunt told the audience that it was a thrill to be in such a special country that I've heard so much about from so many friends. The former British Army officer is on a global tour to promote his fourth album, Moon Landing, which was released in 2013. But the fans most appreciated and sang along to the hits from his first album, Back to Bedlam, released in 2004. Taking a look at local finance, with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off in their trading week in the plus column. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather forecast, and light local rain is expected in the north, with snow predicted on Mount Hermon. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Erin Viner will be here tomorrow at this desk. Please join her for more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.